Hello, friends. I know it's been a while. I promised the rec video part two, and the holidays came and I didn't get to it, so I wanted to share it with you now. And I have my husband here. Say hi, Regis.
Hello.
Regis is here with me to fill in the details and to correct me where I'm wrong, and I wish he would have been the first time because I made some mistakes. So I didn't remember things 100% right. This was actually an accident that happened on August 20th, 2010. And it actually happened about a week after he left his first rehab. And we're going to talk about that a little bit at the end. So, this was the first accident he had, and it was with his company truck. Most of the other details were right. He corrected me and said that it was only a 50-foot drop off
50.
and not 100, like I said. But so we're going to pick up where we left off. Yes, we had a fight because he was drinking and my big mouth got in the way. I had left you kind of cliffhanging, saying I approached the scene to find him laying in a ditch, and the truck turned on its side and everything spewed everywhere. And I'm going to let Regis go ahead and take it from here to tell you a little bit about what was going on at the time of the accident, how he ended up wrecking, how he kept from going down the cliff, and then I'll let him tell the rest of the story, and then we'll do a little bit of question and answer. Thank you. All right, Reg. So tell us, I texted you, and go ahead and take it from there. What made you lose control?
Well, I'm pulling a trailer, and you were texting me, you were lighting me up, you were angry, of course, and justifiable so. But as I'm texting and driving, and I had been drinking, so shouldn't be driving, let alone texting and driving and hauling a camper behind me. But I must have drifted a little bit to the right, and the rear wheels, or the right wheel of the trailer, slipped off the blacktop, and it went into the gravel, the shoulder. These are country roads, and there really isn't a shoulder. It's just a drop off, and that wheel dropped off, and I noticed that the trailer had dropped off, and I kind of panicked, and I overcorrected to pull the trailer back on, and so in overcorrecting, I turned a little bit hard to the left to pull the trailer back up, and the trailer popped up, but the trailer started to fishtail a little bit. Once I overcorrected and got it back on the road, the camper trailer swung real hard to the left, which naturally is going to want to turn the back end of my truck this way, and I overcorrected again one more time to the left, and it fishtailed back, swung the back end of my truck around like this, and the wheels front wheels kind of went off of the road. I'm turned too far sideways, and once that happened, that side of the truck grabbed, and the truck rolled.
How many times did you roll?
I have no idea. Multiple times. The windows were open on my side, and every time I rolled, I could feel the grass or the dead weeds or whatever that was in the ditch in the field. I could feel it just touch the side of my face every time that truck rolled. We probably rolled about 5 times. You saw the stuff scattered and strewn about. I don't know how far it was, but it destroyed the pickup truck. The camper was in pieces, and by the grace of God, I did not get hurt. I mean, I think I had a concussion, but one rock, one simple stick sticking up something when that trailer would have rolled, and my head laid on the ground every time it rolled because that window was open, and I would but nothing happened.
Well, I want to jump in here and just say it's crazy because when I got there, this ditch, it wasn't very deep, but there were little trees about 3 feet tall growing in this ditch. Had he just rolled over on one of them, it could have pierced through his skull, but God protected him. And that's what I wanted him to tell, that part of the story, because I wasn't there. I didn't see it happen. I just saw what it looked like afterward, and it was a mess. So my son and I and his little friend came upon the scene, and then Regis was there. He appeared to be fine, and it was surprising that he was fine. And I looked down the right side, and tell him what the right side showed.
The right side was an extreme drop off. I mean, we're out. One of the beautiful things about Wilson Lake, you know, in Kansas, you think of Kansas as being very flat, but in this area, um, you know, it's the beginning of the area called the Flint Hills, and so there are some ravines, there are some cliffs,
It was
and some
big.
drop offs, and on the right side of the road there was a very, I don't know how, I think
Steep.
steep. I think Connie had said 100. I don't know if it was 100, but certainly could have been 50 foot and a radical drop off, and you know, again, just the providence of God, you know, just took me to the ditch, and one, you know, one simple correction the other way. If I would have went off of the other side of the road, there's no doubt about it, injury would have occurred. How severe, I don't know, but certainly could have resulted in a fatality, because that drop was very significant. But God took me to the other side and then protected me as that truck rolled.
So, what was your first thought when the accident was over?
When it was over,
Yeah. You didn't have your phone. You couldn't call me and tell me.
I couldn't find anything. It was, I had no idea. I didn't know what I was going to do. I actually was just, I remember getting out of the truck and a car came by to see if I was all right, and I told them yes, and that I had somebody coming. I really didn't have anybody coming, but I didn't want people there. And I was just trying to figure out what my next step was. And I would, you know, after that, things just happened so quickly. It would, I mean, when you're in that situation, your first thought is, how did this happen, or what's going to happen now? So that's probably where my mind was. I can't remember completely.
And so, if you watch the first video, my son and my son was probably, what, if this was 2010, he would have been 7. He had his 8 or 9-year-old friend with him. We were at the campsite already because I was livid. I was angry. I was fighting with Regis. I was texting him. Honestly, he thinks he was reading a text that I sent him. Oh, you know you were?
For a fact, yeah.
He was reading a text that I was sending him in my anger when this accident happened. So there's my big mouth again. And I know you all know I have a big mouth, and I've confessed it before. So we jumped into the vehicle anyway, and we didn't know where we were going, but Holy Spirit had set off an alarm in me saying I needed to go. I wasn't hearing back from Regis. I wasn't getting any texts. He wouldn't answer my call. And that alarm went off and sent me looking for him and led me right to him. And I came upon this accident, and I think my first thought at the time was, oh my gosh, look at this mess. What are we going to do? Because obviously I had the concern about the truck, but at the same time, I saw the cliff on the right, and I wish I had a picture of it, because he would have certainly been dead. There's no way he could have survived if he went off that way. And the road was so thin. It's just unbelievable that he just rolled the right direction. But it's not unbelievable, because we serve an awesome God, and God gave him just enough pressure to wake him up, and not let me suffer the consequences of what his decision was, and not to have him have too many consequences. Obviously, he had to deal with his employer having taken this truck that we didn't normally have. He was able to drive them, but it wasn't his company truck.
It wasn't my truck. It was a truck that the quality assurance manager drove. I have my own company vehicles, and I mean, I was the facility manager, so I can drive anything, but I'm not really supposed to grab a brand new Ford F-150 and hook my camper up and take it to the campgrounds. That's not what those vehicles are for.
And that's what I had said previously. So I said he stole the truck, but he corrected me. It wasn't stealing, but we didn't ask permission.
Shouldn't have used it for that.
We shouldn't have used it for that. And so we had that hanging in the air. But then the next step, this is the part that is also so God. So what happened is we ended up having to call the cops, and they came, and then I'm thinking, he's going to get a DUI. This isn't over. Like, I was panicking. And you were probably panicking too. What were you thinking when the cops showed up?
Well, of course I'm nervous, but I mean, when somebody who lives the life that I lived, it was a double life. I mean, I was a very successful businessman, but I struggled with addiction. So as far as manipulating and playing a part and working your way out of tough situations, um, I was used to that. And so when they came, I mean, yes, I was very worried, but I was going to do everything I could to try to play the part and truthfully get out of this situation with minimal damage. And that's really what happened with me. Truthfully, they asked me if I had been drinking. I told them no, which of course was false. And I think they probably didn't believe that.
Well, tell them who was on duty.
Well, there were two people who were on duty. One of them, I'm not going to use names, but
The little boy with us.
his father, and then a gentleman who worked for me at the plant. His best friend was the first sheriff that was there, and the one who talked to me most of the time, the one who conducted the sobriety, the check on me and everything. So they both knew me, knew who I was, knew my family well, very personal, and so on.
So I totally forgot that he knew the other one. So this might make a little difference in the story. So they asked if he was drinking, and then they got out the breathalyzer to do a breathalyzer on him. And the test results came back showing what?
0.00000. They showed no alcohol whatsoever in my breath.
Okay, and that's what they said. And I remember the little.
He told me it must be your lucky day.
Yeah, because
and he turned around and he showed me the machine, and it said 0.00.
Oh, he showed you. Okay. So I was going to say maybe they falsified information, but I guess they didn't, because I do remember later hearing that the breathalyzer was malfunctioning. So I, again, see where God allowed enough pressure to give Regis his wake-up call. But we got out of that without even a DUI. And I say we, I mean, because no matter what, it's not my DUI, but it would have affected me. It would have affected our finances, his ability to drive, whatever else. So God just allowed that much pressure. And so now the next thing I want to say is, a lot of you might be thinking this. I know if I was watching, I would be thinking, you just got out of rehab. It was a 30-day rehab. It was a great rehab. They called him Pastor Regis. He did amazing. I was thinking, this is it. This is my Regis will not drink forever moment. And then this isn't even a week later and he's drinking. And that's why I was so mad. But I just want him to explain why and talk a little bit about why you just got out of a 30-day rehab. Why would you take the drink?
I mean, at this particular point, your loved ones, I don't know their story. I don't know the length of their struggles, the length of their addiction, because there's a multitude of different answers that all make sense. But for me, let me paint a little picture. I started drinking and using drugs in 1981. I was 13 years old. Within a few years, I was drinking or using drugs pretty much every day of my life. By the time I got out of high school, for sure. And when I say every day, until I truthfully entered into recovery and was trying to get sober, there wasn't a day of my life that I was not under the influence of some type of mind-altering substance, alcohol, which was, my nemesis later in life. I gave drugs up. I think it was in probably around the year 2000 when drug testing became prevalent in the workplace. I quit doing drugs. I just replaced that with about 3 times as much alcohol. But with that being said, Connie had mentioned this was 2010. So you're talking 1981 to 2010. I was under the influence of a substance every single day. So I went to a 30-day program. Yes, I certainly did. Um, but 30 days of sobriety in a controlled environment where they're really helping you, they're waking you up, they're reacting to your moods, they're doing everything for you. That basically just gets your feet physically on the ground. But and you leave this recovery program. For me, this first time I left that recovery program, um, I had abstained. It was a forced abstinence for about 30 days. Um, but by no means had any spiritual healing, mental healing, emotional healing, growth taken place. That 30 days was nothing but getting my body physically back into shape where it now was ready to actually begin some work in regards to recovery. And that's what a 30-day program does. I know we come out of these 30-day programs and people are so excited thinking that this is it. Well, the fact remains that you leave a 30-day program, the recovery, the chances of somebody having long-term sobriety is less than 5%. Actually, it's probably less than 3%. Because really all you're doing, if you do nothing else after that, is you're physically just you're getting a little physical. It takes a year for your brain to heal. With all of that being said, I left that program physically feeling a little bit better, but nothing had changed about me
Amen.
that caused me to utilize drugs and alcohol. Now, for me, what brought me into addiction and what kept me into addiction and what would not allow me out of addiction is I never learned how to process my emotions. I really didn't. I came from a really rough childhood, poverty and just types of abuse, physical abuse, and just different things. And I never really learned to process emotions. One of the things that my childhood did for me was instilled in me a very serious drive to never allow my wife to be treated like my mother was treated. She was married and divorced 4 times before I was out of high school. And for my children never to have to deal with the things that I dealt with. And by the grace of God, God blessed me. I had a wonderful career. I met Connie when I was in high school, and we married and had children, and I had this beautiful career and was able to give my family a life of everything that I always wanted as a child. But again, I never had learned how to process emotions. When I used drugs that first time when I was 13, 14 years old, and what really drew me to drugs is I felt good. I mean, I really did. It took away the fear. It took away the anxiety. It took away the embarrassment, all of the different things that I dealt with because of my life situation. I didn't have them, and I liked it. So it became my emotional, what do you want to call it? My emotional crutch, my comfort, and so what did I use as my career took off and the stress of my job became greater and greater. And the anxiety of if I lose this job, this life that I've carved out for my family, it's gone. And so that fear, that anxiety, what did I use? I used drugs and or alcohol to deal with that. And that's what brought me into addiction. It just helped me handle my emotions. Throughout my life, I used it. When my life began to unravel a little bit and these consequences that we're talking about now, and I tried to get into recovery because I knew what I was doing was wrong and I had to change. I now all of a sudden I've got these consequences. I've got the pain and I've got the guilt and the shame that multiple attempts at recovery had failed. I have this guilt, this shame, this condemnation that I have to deal with. And the enemy is very wise. Every time I'd get headway going, he'd bring up these memories, this pain. And I had no other way to deal with these things other than to pick up. And I would pick up and I'd use that to suppress these feelings. So I could not had no idea how to deal with emotions. I go to this 30-day program, I come out of it. There, I did everything that I was supposed to. And the program set up, man, you're getting counseling, you're doing all of these things, and it was great. But I leave, and you walk smack dab out of that controlled environment right back into the world. Nothing has changed about me. I have not learned how to deal with my emotions yet. And instead of continuing on with the things that I learned in the program, so many of us, we walk out of a recovery program and we're sober. Looks like everything is going well. Man, if you have a family, you know what? Your family wants you. Now it's time. Now I want this sober Regis. I want this sober Joe. I want this sober Jim. I want this sober Debbie, Sarah, whoever it may be. But life all of a sudden becomes real again. And for me, I still didn't know how to handle emotions, whether it was happiness, whether it was fear, whether it was just a little bit of stress. Being sober for me was very strange. For 38 years, I was not sober. So being sober was an oddity in its own self. And so instead of continuing with my recovery, I'd allow the cares of the world to creep in, and plus I was sober. I wanted to do some of the things I never could do before. So
we did some of the things that we used to always do that you did when you were drunk.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't ready for some of those things, but I didn't know how to tell you no. If I did, you'd be upset. I didn't want you to be upset because I didn't know how to handle any of that.
Yeah.
I really didn't know how to go out to the lake and to do all the things we do. I was worried. I was this, I was that. This is no excuse. I'm just trying to give you what's going on in my mind. And so what do? Well, what used to work for me, I'll try it. And my plan was never to get drunk. It really wasn't. I just knew that if I had a drink or two, that I was calm, that I was in a much better position to do this, to do that, to respond to you, to do that. That's a lie, but that is how my mind works. We rationalize. We try to come up with rational thoughts, but which are lies. They're untruths to convince our head something that, my spirit knew was wrong. And that, for my first trip, that's what it was. It really was coming out of recovery. I just wasn't ready, and the second time, I wasn't ready. The third time, I wasn't ready. The fourth time, I wasn't ready. I'll tell you what, the fifth time, which is where I received my deliverance, I didn't go to a 30-day program because I knew a 30-day program wasn't going to work. I went to a year-long Christian discipleship, and I don't have enough time to talk all about that, but I will tell you this, the one thing that I came out of that program with is my approach to this was going to be completely different. I had a family, but you know what? Without my sobriety, my family would suffer. I went to a Christian discipleship, and I realized without God, I wasn't going to have my sobriety. So I came out of that program with a different set of priorities, and I came out of that program just knowing that I could handle my emotions if I took them to God. If God was with me, I knew that I could do all things, with Him. And so God was first. My recovery was second. My family and career and everything else became third. So.
Well, thank you, Regis, for sharing with us. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I hope we can make some more videos. I hope you got something out of this. I'll probably divide this up into a couple videos. I'm not sure because I know shorter is better, or maybe I'll do an extended version and a regular version, because I do think you said so many valuable things. I think that we all needed to hear those things, what goes on in an alcoholic's mind when they're going through
and that's
things.
Just, there's so much more. You can't get it all in one video. You really can't.
Well, we'll start sharing more. Thanks for watching, friends. Goodbye.
Goodbye.